In a bustling, ordinary street corner in one of America's oldest cities, a figure stood day after day, preaching the Word of God. His voice boomed with authority, the words rolling off his tongue in the rhythmic cadence of a preacher who had been doing this for decades. To those who passed by, he was simply another preacher on the corner, one of many who stood to deliver sermons to anyone who would listen. But no one knew the truth about this preacher. No one knew that the man they mocked for standing there with fire in his belly was more than just a humble servant of the Lord. He was a United States Senator. Every day, rain or shine, there he was, on the corner of 12th Street and Willow Avenue, his Bible in one hand, a worn, leather-bound copy that looked like it had been through the test of time, and a steady stream of passionate words pouring from his lips. His name was Reverend Samuel Johnson, and he had lived a life filled with obstacles, adversity, and above all, resilience. But to the casual observer, he was nothing more than a black preacher, someone who didn't have the means or status to matter in the grand scheme of things. The mocking came from every direction. Drivers slowed down, rolled down their windows, and made snide remarks. "Preach it, Reverend." They'd yell sarcastically, as if his words were nothing more than noise. People would walk by, some shaking their heads, others chuckling under their breath. His presence, so full of life and energy, was often met with ridicule. "Get a real job," one passerby shouted one day. "No one cares about your sermons here." A few chuckles rippled through the crowd. Samuel, however, didn't flinch. He continued, his voice unwavering. He had heard the jeers before, and they didn't bother him. After all, he had faced far worse in his life. What no one knew, however, was that Reverend Samuel Johnson wasn't just any preacher on the corner. He wasn't just a man who had dedicated his life to service in his community. He was a man who had risen from the depths of poverty, racism, and prejudice to become one of the most influential political figures in the country. He was a United States Senator, serving the people of his district with passion, courage, and integrity. Yet here he was, preaching on the corner, not because he had to, but because he believed it was his calling. The truth about Samuel's past wasn't something he often shared. After all, how could you explain to the people who mocked you every day that you were once a high-ranking politician, a man who had fought for civil rights, for equality, and for justice? How could you convince the skeptical that the man standing before them, dressed in a simple black suit, was the same man who had once stood in the halls of Congress, making decisions that affected millions? It was all part of his plan. Samuel knew that the power of his position had to be rooted in the people, not in his title. He wanted the world to see him as just another person, someone who understood their struggles, their pains, and their hopes. By standing on that corner, he showed people that no matter how high you rise, no matter how powerful you become, you should never forget where you came from. But Samuel's journey to that corner was anything but simple. He had grown up in a poor neighborhood, surrounded by poverty and systemic racism. His family had struggled to make ends meet, and his childhood was marked by hardships that no child should have to face. His mother, a tireless worker, did everything she could to provide for her family, but there was always more month left at the end of the paycheck. Samuel often had to walk miles to school, his shoes full of holes, his clothes hand-me-downs from older siblings. Yet, despite all the obstacles, his mother taught him one lesson that he would carry with him forever. Never let the world define you. He learned that lesson early when he encountered racism for the first time. It happened in his small town when he was just 10 years old. He had been playing with a group of children when a white boy, a few years older than him, shoved him to the ground. "What are you doing here?" The boy spat, his voice full of venom. Samuel didn't understand. He had done nothing wrong. He had just been playing. But the boy's hate-filled words stung deeply. Samuel's mother was furious when she found out. "You don't let anyone make you feel less than," she told him, her eyes fierce with protective love. "You hold your head up high, and you walk with dignity. Don't let the world make you feel small." Samuel took that lesson to heart. It didn't matter what people said or did. He was going to rise above it. He worked hard in school, eventually earning a scholarship to a prestigious college. After graduation, he attended law school, where he continued to face discrimination, but he pushed through. He knew that if he wanted to make a difference, he had to fight harder than anyone else. As a young attorney, Samuel began working with local civil rights organizations, fighting against the injustices that plagued his community. He became a prominent figure in the fight for equality, and soon, his name began to spread. Before long, he was recruited to run for Congress, a position that he felt could give him the platform he needed to effect real change. The campaign wasn't easy. He faced racist attacks, smear campaigns, and obstacles that seemed insurmountable. But Samuel didn't back down. He campaigned tirelessly, walking door to door, talking to anyone who would listen. And when he won, it wasn't just a personal victory. It was a victory for everyone who had ever been told they couldn't succeed. During his time in Congress, Samuel fought for civil rights, affordable health care, and education reform. He became a voice for the voiceless, a champion for the marginalized, and an advocate for change. His name became synonymous with integrity and progress. But as his career flourished, Samuel found himself increasingly disconnected from the very people he had fought so hard to represent. Politics, he realized, was a world filled with compromises and corruption. The more he climbed, the more he began to question whether he was still fighting for the right reasons. That's when he made the decision that would change his life, and the lives of many others forever. Samuel chose to step away from politics. He left behind the high-paying job, the suits, and the title of senator. He returned to his roots, to the very street corner where he had once faced racial injustice as a child. He returned to preach. At first, many were confused by his decision. Why would a U.S. senator choose to stand on a street corner, preaching to a crowd of disinterested passers-by? But Samuel knew what he was doing. The people on that corner didn't need a senator. They needed a person who could relate to their struggles, who could understand their pain. He stood there not because he wanted attention, but because he wanted to remind people that no matter their circumstances, they had the power to rise. And rise they did. Over time, the mocking laughter turned to respectful nods. People began to listen. They started to understand that the preacher on the corner was more than just a man with a Bible in his hand. He was a man who had lived through it all, poverty, racism, and the complex world of politics, and had come out the other side stronger and wiser. One day, a young man approached Samuel after his sermon. "I never knew," the man said, his voice filled with awe. "I never knew who you really were. I thought you were just a preacher, but you've done so much more. You've fought for us. You've given us hope." Samuel smiled and placed a hand on the man's shoulder. "I'm still fighting," he said softly. "But now I fight with you, not for you. We fight together." From that day on, Samuel became a beloved figure in the town, not just as a preacher, but as a symbol of resilience, humility, and community. People from all walks of life came to him for advice, for guidance, and for hope. And even as the years went by, Samuel continued to stand on that corner, preaching the same message he had preached all those years ago, that no matter what the world throws at you, you have the power to rise above it. Thank you for watching this inspiring story. If you enjoyed this tale of resilience and the power of community, don't forget to hit that like button, share it with your friends, and subscribe for more incredible stories just like this. And leave a comment below telling us what motivates you to keep pushing forward, no matter the obstacles.